My name is Nancy Williams, 56 years old, and nothing prepares you for the moment your only daughter points at you in front of 200 wedding guests and accuses you of theft. Jessica's face twisted with anger as she shouted, "Get out, you're not family anymore." So I walked away head high despite my shattered heart. What kind of mother gets publicly disowned at her daughter's wedding? Mine is a story of betrayal and dignity, and an unexpected truth that emerged the following morning. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If stories of family forgiveness and finding strength resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. What happened after I left that wedding will leave you speechless. I always believed the bond between a mother and daughter was unbreakable. For most of Jessica's life, it was just the two of us against the world. Her father Daniel walked out when she was 7 years old, claiming he wasn't cut out for family life. One Tuesday morning, he kissed us goodbye, as usual. But instead of coming home that evening, he left a voicemail saying he was moving to California with a coworker. Just like that, our family of 3 became 2. The first year was the hardest. Jessica would sit by the window every evening around the time her father used to come home, waiting for a car that never appeared. I'd find her there, small face pressed against the glass, and my heart would break all over again. Eventually, she stopped waiting, but the hurt lingered in her eyes. We survived because we had to. I took on extra shifts at the hospital where I worked as a medical receptionist, then added weekend work cleaning offices. Sleep became a luxury as I juggled bills, childcare, and keeping our modest home running. Many nights I'd collapse into bed well past midnight, only to be up at 5 to prepare Jessica's lunch and get her ready for school before my morning shift. Despite the financial struggles, those early years built a special closeness between us. Every Sunday was our sacred girls' day. Even when money was tight, we'd make pancakes shaped like animals and spend hours at the public park or library. I still remember Jessica at 9, her face serious as she proclaimed these were the best pancakes in the universe, despite the lumps and occasionally burned edges. For her 10th birthday, I saved for months to buy the doll she'd been eyeing in the store window. I worked double shifts for 6 weekends straight, skipping lunches and walking the 3 miles to work instead of taking the bus. When she unwrapped that gift, her eyes widened with disbelief before she launched herself into my arms. "You're the best mum ever," she whispered. I held that memory close on the hardest days. Jessica was a bright child, curious, determined, and surprisingly compassionate. When she was 12, she organized a neighborhood collection for an elderly couple whose house had been damaged in a storm. At 14, she started tutoring younger students in math, insisting on saving half of her small earnings for college. I was so proud of her resilience and drive. High school brought academic success and social challenges. Jessica wasn't part of the popular crowd. Our budget couldn't accommodate designer clothes or the latest gadgets. But she found her place on the debate team and student government, impressing teachers with her articulate presentations and logical mind. "You should be a lawyer," her debate coach told her during junior year. Jessica came home that day with a new fire in her eyes. "Mum, that's what I want to do," she declared. "I want to go to law school." I supported her dream wholeheartedly, though privately I worried about the cost. We researched scholarships relentlessly, and Jessica studied for her SATs with an intensity that sometimes concerned me. "You need balance, sweetheart." I'd say when I found her still awake at 2 in the morning, surrounded by practice tests. "I know what I'm doing," she'd respond, a new edge to her voice. "This is my future." Her hard work paid off with a partial scholarship to a good state university. I remortgaged our small house to cover the remaining tuition, never telling Jessica just how tight our finances had become. All that mattered was giving her the opportunities I never had. College marked the beginning of subtle changes in my daughter. She came home that first Thanksgiving with new highlights in her hair and a slightly different way of speaking, more polished, less like our hometown accent. I noticed her wince when I said yawl at dinner, though she quickly masked it with a smile. By sophomore year, her visits home grew shorter and less frequent. She joined a prestigious sorority and spent holidays with her new friends at their vacation homes. "It's networking, Mum," she explained when I expressed disappointment. "These connections will help my career." I tried to understand. After all, wasn't this what I'd worked so hard for? For Jessica to have opportunities beyond what our small town could offer. Still, I missed our Sunday brunches and late-night talks. Law school accelerated the transformation. Jessica interned at a high-powered firm in the city and adopted their uniform of sleek suits and understated luxury. When she visited, she brought expensive wines I couldn't pronounce and talked about colleagues and cases that sounded like a foreign language to me. "You could update this place a bit," she suggested once glancing around our living room with the same furniture we'd had since her childhood. "It's so dated." I laughed it off, but her words stung. This home held all our memories. The couch, where I'd held her through childhood nightmares. The dining table scratched from years of homework and art projects. To her, it had become something to be embarrassed about. Then came Robert. Jessica mentioned him casually at first, a senior associate at her firm, from a prominent family with connections throughout the legal world. Their relationship progressed quickly, and 6 months later she called with news of their engagement. "He's got a family ring, Mum, generations old. It's beautiful." I was thrilled for her happiness, but asked when I'd get to meet this man who'd won my daughter's heart. There was a slight pause before she answered. "We'll come for dinner next month," she promised. "Just maybe we could go out somewhere nice instead of eating at the house." When I finally met Robert, I understood Jessica's hesitation. He was handsome and polite, but there was a coolness beneath his practiced smile. He asked about my work with the air of someone making conversation with a service provider, not his future mother-in-law. When Jessica mentioned something from her childhood, he seemed almost surprised, as if he couldn't quite picture her in our modest surroundings. After they left, I cried for the first time in years. My daughter was marrying a man who looked at me like I was something to overcome in his perfect life plan. And somewhere along the way, Jessica had started seeing me through his eyes. The wedding planning began immediately with Robert's parents taking charge from the start. The budget they mentioned casually over dinner one evening, we're thinking around 100,000 give or take, was more than I'd paid for our house. I sat quietly as they discussed venues I'd never heard of and traditions I didn't understand. "Nancy, of course, we'd love any contribution you feel comfortable making," Robert's mother Elizabeth said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But please don't worry yourself. We're happy to handle the majority." I'd saved $3,000, nearly a year of careful budgeting, skipping dental appointments and home repairs. When I mentioned this sum, Elizabeth patted my hand. "That's sweet. Perhaps you could cover the rehearsal dinner flowers." Jessica avoided my eyes during this exchange. Later, when we had a moment alone, I asked about my traditional mother-of-the-bride responsibilities. "Actually, Mum," she said carefully, "Elizabeth has connections with all the top vendors. It makes more sense for her to take the lead. You're so busy with work and everything." "I could take some time off," I offered. "I'd love to help with dress shopping at least." "I've already scheduled appointments at some boutiques in the city with Elizabeth and my bridesmaids," she replied quickly. "The designers know Elizabeth, so they're giving us special treatment." Each exclusion hurt more than the last. I wasn't included in menu tastings, floral arrangements, or even addressing invitations. The monthly planning brunches happened at country clubs I couldn't afford to enter, otherwise where I sat quietly while Elizabeth and her friends discussed bands I'd never heard of and wines I couldn't pronounce. I noticed Jessica growing increasingly irritated with me at these gatherings. "Mum, it's champagne, not champagne," she whispered harshly after I mispronounced it. Or, "Those shoes really don't go with that dress. Couldn't you have worn the heels I bought you?" The heels in question were beautiful, but impossibly uncomfortable. I'd practiced walking in them at home until my feet bled, but still felt unsteady. What Jessica didn't understand was that after decades of practical shoes for long hospital shifts, my feet simply couldn't adapt to 3-inch stilettos. For the wedding itself, I spent 2 months' salary on a dress that Jessica deemed appropriate, a dusty blue gown that cost more than any piece of clothing I'd ever owned. When I expressed concern about the price, she sighed. "This is my wedding, Mum. Can't you just be happy for me instead of making everything about money?" Her words cut deep. Everything I'd ever done, every extra shift, every sacrificed vacation, every bill paid late so she could have dance lessons or new school clothes, had been for her. I'd never put my needs first, not once in 29 years. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received my invitation. Despite being the mother of the bride, I'd never seen the final design. Opening the heavy cream envelope, I admired the elegant calligraphy and thoughtful details. Then I noticed something strange. The reception card listed table assignments, and mine was table 15. I called Jessica immediately. "Sweetheart, there seems to be a mistake on the invitation. I'm seated at table 15. "That's correct," she replied, her tone businesslike. "But isn't family at the head table?" I asked, confused. "Mum, we've decided to just have the bridal party at the head table. Robert's parents understand. They're at table 1 with his grandparents and their closest friends." "And where are my friends, your aunts and uncle?" These were the people who'd helped raise Jessica, my sister who babysit for free so I could work extra shifts, my brother who taught Jessica to ride a bike when there was no father to do so. "They're at tables 14 and 15 with you," she said, impatience creeping into her voice. "It's really not a big deal. Can we please not make this into a thing?" But it was a thing to me. It was one more sign that I was being pushed to the periphery of my only child's life, treated like a distant relation, rather than the woman who had given everything for her. The bridal shower was the final straw. Hosted at Elizabeth's country club, it was an elaborate affair with champagne fountains and a 5-course lunch. I'd spent weeks making a special gift, a handmade quilt incorporating fabric from Jessica's baby blanket, her graduation dress, and other meaningful moments from her life. I'd stayed up past midnight for a month, pricking my fingers and straining my eyes to create something meaningful when I couldn't compete with the expensive gifts others would bring. When Jessica unwrapped it, there was an awkward silence. "Oh, it's homemade," she said with a tight smile. "How traditional." Elizabeth quickly passed her another gift, a crystal vase from Tiffany, and the moment passed. But later, I overheard Jessica in the bathroom with her bridesmaids. "Can you believe that quilt's so embarrassing? Like we live in some country farmhouse or something." "Your mum seems sweet, though," one girl offered. "Sweet but clueless," Jessica replied. "Thank God Robert sees past my family situation." I slipped away before they emerged, my face burning with shame. This poised, dismissive woman was unrecognizable as the little girl who once made me Mother's Day cards, promising love bigger than the sky. That night I considered not attending the wedding at all, but she was still my daughter, my only child. So I pushed down the hurt and told myself it would get better after the wedding pressure was over. That once Jessica settled into married life, she'd remember the bond we'd shared for so many years. I was wrong. The morning of Jessica's wedding dawned clear and beautiful, one of those perfect June days that seem made for new beginnings. I arrived early at the Grand Hotel, where both ceremony and reception would take place, nervous but hopeful. This was still my daughter's special day, and despite everything, I was determined to support her with a smile. The bridal suite was a flurry of activity when I arrived. Bridesmaids in matching silk robes, hair and makeup artists, working their magic champagne flowing freely despite the early hour. Jessica sat in the center of it all, already transformed with her hair half done, looking every bit the society bride. "Mum, you're early," she said, glancing at the ornate clock on the wall. The room briefly quieted other conversations, pausing as everyone turned to look at me. "I thought I could help," I offered, holding up the small bag I'd brought. "I have some mints for dry mouth before the ceremony and safety pins for any emergencies." One of the bridesmaids, Melanie, Jessica's maid of honor from her sorority, smirked slightly. "The wedding planner has an emergency kit with literally everything, Mrs. Williams. Professional grade." Jessica sighed. "Mum, why don't you go check that Aunt Linda and Uncle Steve found their rooms okay? You can come back when it's time to get dressed." Dismissed like a helpful servant rather than the mother of the bride, I retreated to the hallway. For the next few hours, I wandered between tasks no one really needed me to do, feeling increasingly invisible. When I returned to the suite to dress, the atmosphere had shifted to stressed excitement. Jessica was fully made up now, looking breathtakingly beautiful and utterly unfamiliar. "Oh my God, the bracelet!" she exclaimed suddenly. "Has anyone seen my bracelet?" The room erupted in search mode, as everyone looked for what I soon learned was an heirloom diamond tennis bracelet, Robert's mother's gift for the something borrowed tradition. Worth more than my house, apparently. "Here it is," Melanie announced, retrieving it from a velvet pouch. "Safe and sound." I watched as Melanie fastened it around Jessica's wrist, a glittering line of diamonds that caught the light with every movement. Jessica admired it in the mirror, turning her wrist this way and that. "Perfect," she breathed. "Absolutely perfect." The ceremony itself was like watching a movie starring someone who resembled my daughter. Jessica floated down the aisle on Robert's father's arm. She'd decided against asking my brother to fill the traditional role, saying it would be awkward. I sat alone in the front row, designated for the bride's family, a row that would have been filled if Jessica's father had been part of her life. If grandparents had still been living, if she hadn't decided her childhood friends weren't appropriate for her bridal party. Still, when she said her vows in a clear, confident voice, I cried with genuine happiness. Whatever our troubles, she was my child, and she looked radiant with love. The reception began smoothly enough. The ballroom was transformed into a garden wonderland with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers draped with greenery. I found my assigned table at the back of the room where I was seated with distant relatives and a few of my old friends who had known Jessica since childhood. "You must be so proud," my friend Susan whispered as we watched Jessica and Robert share their first dance. "I am," I said. And despite everything, it was true. The pleasant atmosphere shattered during the main course. Jessica suddenly stood at the head table, clinking her glass for attention. Her face was flushed eyes wide with distress or anger. I couldn't tell which from across the room. "Excuse me, everyone," she announced, voice tight. "I need to report something upsetting. My diamond bracelet, my something borrowed from my mother-in-law, is missing from the bridal suite." A murmur ran through the crowd. I felt a flicker of concern. The bracelet I'd seen Melanie fasten on her wrist hours earlier. "Security is checking the footage now," Jessica continued, "but I have reason to believe it was taken by someone in this room." And then, to my absolute horror, she turned and pointed directly at me. "My mother was alone in the suite multiple times today, and I've just been informed she was seen near my jewelry right before the bracelet disappeared." The room went silent. 200 faces turned toward me, expressions ranging from shock to uncomfortable pity to outright suspicion. "Jessica," I gasped, standing so quickly my chair toppled backward. "What are you saying?" "Don't pretend to be shocked," she said coldly. "You've been jealous of Robert's family from day one, always making comments about their money, how they can afford things you never could." This was a complete fabrication. I'd been careful never to express any resentment, even when I felt it. "I never said anything like that," I protested, feeling as though I'd stepped into some bizarre nightmare. Robert stood now, placing a supportive arm around Jessica. "Mrs. Williams, if you just return the bracelet, we can handle this discreetly." "I don't have it." My voice rose with panic and disbelief. "Jessica, you know I would never steal anything, especially not on your wedding day." "Then you won't mind if security checks your purse and room?" Elizabeth suggested, her tone deceptively gentle. I looked at Jessica, waiting for her to come to her senses, to recognize the absurdity of accusing her own mother of theft. Instead, she stared back with cold determination. "Get out," she said clearly, each word precise and cutting. "Get out, you're not family anymore. I'm ashamed you're my mother." The words struck like physical blows. Around me, guests shifted uncomfortably, some averting their eyes, others watching the drama with poorly concealed interest. In that moment, I had a choice: create a bigger scene by defending myself, or leave with what dignity I could salvage. I straightened my shoulders, picked up my small evening bag, and walked slowly toward the exit. As I passed Jessica, I paused briefly. "I have never been anything but proud of you," I said quietly. "I hope someday you remember that." Then I walked out, head held high, despite the whispers that followed me, despite the security guard who trailed me to make sure I left the premises, despite my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces with every step. The drive home passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. Twice I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road through my crying. How had this happened? What had I done to make my own child turn against me so completely that she would publicly accuse me of theft? Was this really the same little girl who once made me breakfast in bed for Mother's Day? Burnt toast and lukewarm tea. She'd been so proud of preparing by herself. When I finally reached my small house, the contrast between the opulent wedding venue and my modest home hit me anew. The peeling paint and aging roof had never bothered me before. This was where Jessica had taken her first steps, where we'd built blanket forts during thunderstorms, where I'd helped her practice college admission interviews. Now I saw it through her eyes, embarrassing, inadequate something to escape from. I collapsed onto the sofa, still wearing my expensive dress, too emotionally exhausted to even change clothes. For hours I sat in the dark, reliving every moment of Jessica's childhood, searching for the point where things had gone wrong. Had I been too strict, too lenient? Had working multiple jobs deprived her of something essential? Or had the absence of her father created a wound I couldn't see, but that had festered over time? Around midnight, my phone began ringing. Susan, then my sister Linda, then others who had witnessed the scene. I let the calls go to voicemail, unable to discuss what had happened without breaking down completely. Finally, I listened to the messages. "Nancy, it's Susan. What happened tonight was awful. No one believes you took anything. Call me when you can." "Sis, it's Linda. Jessica has lost her mind. We left right after you did. Call me back." The third message made me sit up straight. "Mrs. Williams, this is Sam, Jessica's cousin. Look, I know we're not close, but you need to know something. I saw Melanie with that bracelet earlier. She was showing it off to the other bridesmaids in the bathroom when Jessica wasn't around. I think you were set up by my own daughter." It seemed impossible, too calculated, too cruel. And yet something clicked into place. Jessica's strange determination to push me away these past months. Her increased hostility as the wedding approached. Had she been looking for a way to make a final break? More messages followed, friends expressing outrage and support, relatives voicing their shock. But I couldn't bring myself to return any calls. What was there to say? That my only child had publicly disowned me, that the person I loved most in the world had deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. I dragged myself to bed around 2 in the morning, though sleep seemed impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's face contorted with manufactured anger, heard her cold voice saying, "You're not family anymore." 29 years of love and sacrifice dismissed in a single moment. As the night crawled toward dawn, I cycled through grief, disbelief, and finally a slow-burning anger. I had given Jessica everything I possibly could: love, support, opportunities, freedom to become her own person. And this was how she repaid that lifetime of devotion, with a calculated public humiliation. By morning, exhaustion had given way to a strange calm. Whatever Jessica's reasons, whatever pain or shame had driven her to such an extreme action, I could not fix it. For perhaps the first time since she was born, I recognized that my daughter's choices were entirely her own, and the consequences would be as well. I was making coffee when Sam called again. "Mrs. Williams, there's been a development. I thought you should know before you hear it elsewhere." "What is it, Sam?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, steady and distant. "The bracelet turned up, in Melanie's purse." He paused. She got drunk at the after-party and opened her bag to get her phone, and it was right there. Hotel security had been reviewing footage and saw her take it from the bridal suite. She's claiming it was just a prank gone wrong. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table. "Does Jessica know?" "Everyone knows," Sam replied. "It's causing quite a scene. Robert's mother is furious, and Jessica is trying to damage control. She's telling people there was just a misunderstanding, that she never actually accused you directly." The injustice of it burned. 200 people heard her point at me and say I stole it. "I know," Sam said quietly. "For what it's worth, a lot of guests are pretty disgusted with how you were treated. Robert's father apparently had a long talk with Jessica and Robert this morning." After hanging up, I sat motionless, trying to process this new information. My name was cleared, but the damage was done. My daughter had been willing to destroy our relationship rather than acknowledge me as part of her new life. The bracelet had just been a convenient excuse. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "The bracelet was found. You can tell people there was a misunderstanding." No apology, no acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused. Just instructions on how to help her save face. For the first time in my life, I didn't respond to my daughter's message. Instead, I called Barbara, my oldest friend, who had left the wedding immediately after my departure. "Can we meet for coffee?" I asked. "I need a friendly face right now." An hour later, sitting in our favorite local cafe, I let everything pour out. Not just the wedding disaster, but all the months of growing distance and dismissal leading up to it. "She's ashamed of me, Barbara, of where she comes from, who I am." Barbara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then that's her loss, Nancy, because you are the most generous, loving person I know. Any daughter would be lucky to have you as a mother." "I keep wondering where I went wrong," I admitted. "You didn't," Barbara said firmly. "Some people get a taste of a different world and decide their past doesn't fit their future. Jessica made choices, terrible, hurtful choices. That reflects on her character, not your parenting." As we talked, my phone continued to buzz with messages I wasn't ready to read. The latest text from Jessica caught my eye, slightly more conciliatory, but still focused on appearances. "Mum, we should talk. People are asking questions I don't know how to answer." Still no real apology. Still concerned primarily with how things looked to others. "What will you do now?" Barbara asked gently. I considered the question seriously. The reflexive answer, forgive immediately, try to repair things, prioritize Jessica's feelings, no longer felt right. For perhaps the first time, I needed to prioritize my own well-being. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to process, to grieve, to decide what kind of relationship I can have with someone who was willing to throw me away so easily." Barbara nodded. "That sounds healthy. And Nancy, remember you still have family. Maybe not by blood, but people who love you and would never treat you the way Jessica did." As I drove home, I realized something important: the worst had happened. My greatest fear, losing my daughter, had come to pass. And yet here I was, still breathing, still moving forward. There was a strange power in that realization, a foundation upon which I could begin to rebuild. In the days that followed, news of what had really happened spread quickly through our social circle. My phone rang constantly with calls from wedding guests offering support and expressing outrage on my behalf. I answered selectively, grateful for the kindness, but still too raw to discuss the situation at length. Jessica continued texting her messages, growing increasingly urgent as she realized I wasn't going to help her manage the fallout. "Mum, please call me back. People are saying awful things about me." And later, "This isn't fair. You're making me look terrible by not responding." The irony was painful. After months of pushing me away, after publicly disowning me, she now wanted my help in rehabilitation her image. My silence wasn't calculated revenge. I simply had nothing to say that wouldn't come from a place of deep hurt. A week after the wedding, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. "Nancy, this is Catherine Roberts' mother." I nearly hung up, not prepared to face more accusations or condescension, but something in her voice stopped me. "I owe you an apology," she continued before I could respond. "What happened at the wedding was unforgivable, and I should have spoken up immediately. Thank you for saying that." I managed, surprised by her candor. "I've wanted to call since that night, but frankly, I was ashamed of my own silence." She paused. "The truth is, I've been uncomfortable with the way Jessica treats you for some time. I recognized it because my own sister-in-law behaves similarly toward her mother, always embarrassed, always dismissive." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you deserve to know you're not alone in seeing the problem, and because I admire your dignity. Walking out of that reception with your head high took tremendous strength." Our conversation lasted nearly an hour. Catherine wasn't what I'd expected. Beneath the polished exterior was a woman who had also come from modest beginnings, who had married into wealth, and sometimes still felt like an outsider despite 30 years in that world. "Jessica reminds me of some of the young women I've encountered over the years," she said thoughtfully. "So eager to be accepted by a certain social circle that they're willing to erase their past to fit in. It never works, of course. Authenticity always matters in the end." After we hung up, I sat in my garden processing this unexpected alliance. The same day, I received messages from several of Jessica's childhood friends, people she'd left behind when she moved into her new life. They expressed shock at what had happened and reminded me of happy memories from when they'd spent time in our home as teenagers. "Your house was always where everyone felt welcome," wrote Tara, who had been Jessica's best friend throughout high school. "You treated us like your own kids." Jessica was lucky, even if she can't see that now. These connections helped me begin to heal. They reminded me that while Jessica might have rewritten our history in her mind, Others remembered the truth of who I was as a mother, as a person. After 2 weeks of reflection and several sessions with a therapist, I'd started seeing. I decided to write Jessica a letter, rather than call or meet in person. I needed to express myself fully without interruption or manipulation. I wrote from the heart, without accusation, but with complete honesty. Jessica, I have loved you every day of your life from the moment I first held you in my arms. That love hasn't changed even now. What happened at your wedding wasn't just about a bracelet. It was the culmination of months, perhaps years, of you pushing me away, of showing shame about your upbringing, of treating me as an embarrassment rather than your mother. I don't know exactly when or why you decided I didn't fit into your new life. Perhaps it was gradual. Perhaps there were things I did that hurt or disappointed you that I'm unaware of. If so, I wish you had talked to me about them instead of building this wall between us. What I do know is that I deserve basic respect and kindness. Everyone does. I worked multiple jobs to give you opportunities. I cheered your successes and comforted your disappointments. I put your needs before my own for 29 years. While I never expected gratitude for doing what mothers do, I certainly never expected public humiliation as repayment. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I'm writing because I need you to understand that reconciliation, if it happens, will require acknowledgement of the hurt caused and a commitment to change. I cannot and will not return to a relationship where I'm treated as something shameful to be hidden away or discarded when inconvenient. I will always love you. I will always be your mother. But what that means going forward is something we both need to reconsider. Mum. I mailed the letter, certified mail, to ensure it reached her and couldn't be claimed lost. Then I turned my focus to rebuilding my own life. I joined a support group for parents estranged from adult children, a surprisingly common situation I discovered. Listening to others' stories helped me feel less alone and gave me perspective on setting healthy boundaries. I expanded my volunteer work at the local children's hospital, finding purpose in comforting sick children whose parents couldn't be with them during treatments. The simple act of reading stories or playing quiet games with these children filled an empty space in my heart. Most surprisingly, I maintained contact with Catherine. Our unlikely friendship grew through occasional lunches and phone calls. She never pressured me about Jessica, instead sharing her own experiences, navigating complicated family dynamics with authenticity and grace. I admire how you're handling this, she told me during one lunch. Many people would have fought back publicly or tried to force a reconciliation on any terms. You're showing real strength by waiting for a meaningful resolution. The compliment meant more than she could know. For so long, I'd measured my worth through Jessica's eyes. Learning to see myself through my own eyes and those of people who genuinely respected me was a profound shift. 6 months after the wedding, my life had transformed in unexpected ways. I'd redecorated my small home not to impress others, but to please myself, painting the living room a vibrant yellow that brightened my spirits, replacing old furniture with comfortable pieces I loved. I'd joined a community garden group and a book club building. New friendships with people who accepted me exactly as I was. I'd also started taking online courses in hospital administration, working toward a promotion that had long seemed out of reach. My supervisor noticed the change in my confidence and gave me increased responsibilities, which I handled with a competence that surprised even me. Jessica had made multiple attempts to contact me in those months, first with demanding texts, then with guilt-inducing voicemails, finally with casual messages, acting as if nothing significant had happened. I responded briefly, but maintained the boundary I'd established in my letter: no meaningful relationship without accountability. The holiday season approached, bringing its own emotional challenges. Thanksgiving had always been our special time, Just Jessica and me preparing a feast together, laughing in the kitchen, sharing what we were grateful for. This year, I accepted an invitation to join Barbara and her family instead of sitting home alone with memories. A week before Christmas, I received a small package in the mail with Jessica's return address. Inside was a handwritten card, the first genuine communication since the wedding. Mum, I don't know how to begin to apologize for what I did. Sorry seems inadequate for the hurt I've caused. The truth is, I've been ashamed, not of you, but of myself and my own insecurities. Somewhere along the way, I decided that erasing my past was easier than reconciling it with my present. I was wrong. Robert and I are separating. He filed for annulment last month, saying our marriage was based on false pretenses. He's not wrong. I've been playing a role for so long I barely recognize myself anymore. Catherine has been unexpectedly kind through this process. She told me about your friendship, which surprised me at first, but now makes perfect sense. You're both authentic women with strength I've only pretended to have. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm finally facing the truth about who I've become and how terribly I've treated the person who has loved me most consistently throughout my life. If you're willing, I'd like to meet somewhere neutral to talk. No expectations, no pressure. Just a conversation between two adults with a complicated history. With love and profound regret, Jessica. I read the letter multiple times, searching for manipulation or insincerity. Finding none, I texted her suggesting coffee at a cafe midway between our homes. We set a date for after the holidays, giving us both time to prepare emotionally. When we finally met in January, the woman who walked into the cafe looked more like the daughter I remembered than the bride who had disowned me. Jessica wore minimal makeup, her hair in a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a sweater rather than her usual tailored suit. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for asking," I replied, working to keep my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. For the first hour, our conversation remained careful and somewhat distant as we re-established basic trust. Jessica explained more about her separation from Robert, how the facade of perfection had crumbled quickly once the wedding was over. She spoke about therapy and painful realizations about patterns in her life. "I think I've been running from who I really am since college," she admitted. "Each step up the social ladder made me more determined to hide where I came from. Not because it was bad, but because I thought it wasn't good enough." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm starting over. New job at a smaller firm, new apartment, new perspective." She looked down at her coffee. "The hardest part is facing how many genuine relationships I sacrificed for superficial ones, especially ours." "Jessica," I said carefully, "I need to know something. The bracelet, the accusation, was that planned in advance? Did you deliberately set me up?" Her face crumpled with genuine shame. "Not exactly. The bracelet really did go missing. Or I thought it did. Melanie suggested you might have taken it out of jealousy, and in that moment, it seemed plausible because I'd spent months convincing myself you resented my new life. I acted on impulse, but the impulse came from months of pushing you away in my mind." "That's hard to hear," I said honestly. "I know. It's horrible to say out loud." Tears filled her eyes. "The worst part is that deep down, I knew you would never do something like that. Never. But admitting that would have meant facing all the ways I'd mistreated you, all the lies I'd told myself." We talked for nearly 3 hours, covering painful ground, but also remembering better times, Sunday pancake traditions. Our vacation to the Grand Canyon when she was 12, the night we stayed up until dawn, when she got her first heartbreak at 16. As we prepared to leave, Jessica asked hesitantly, "Where do we go from here?" I considered the question seriously. I don't know exactly. We can't go backward, pretend this never happened. But we can try moving forward slowly, rebuilding with honesty this time. I'd like that, she said, voice thick with emotion. Me too, I admitted. But Jessica, I need you to understand something important. I will always love you unconditionally. That's what being a mother means to me. But loving unconditionally doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. I won't do that again, not for you, not for anyone. She nodded, wiping away tears. You shouldn't have to. I'm so sorry it took losing you to realize what I had. We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, a brief, tentative embrace that held both pain and possibility. As I drove home, I felt lighter somehow, as if setting clear boundaries had freed me rather than limited me. In the months that followed, Jessica and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully, not as the enmeshed mother and daughter we had once been, but as two adult women with genuine respect for each other. We had Sunday brunch once a month, occasional phone calls, text messages about everyday things. Each positive interaction laid another brick in the foundation of trust we were reconstructing. The journey wasn't always smooth. Sometimes old patterns emerged, and I had to remind both of us of the new boundaries. Sometimes painful memories resurfaced, requiring honest conversations rather than polite avoidance. But gradually, something authentic emerged from the ruins of what had been lost. I've learned that family relationships aren't guaranteed by blood alone. They must be tended with care, honesty, and mutual respect. I've discovered that setting boundaries isn't selfish, but necessary for genuine connection. Most importantly, I've found that my worth isn't determined by anyone else's assessment, not even my beloved daughter's. If my story resonates with you, please know you're not alone. So many parents face rejection or mistreatment from adult children and suffer in silence, wondering where they went wrong. Sometimes the answer is nowhere. Sometimes people simply make hurtful choices for their own complex reasons. Have you experienced something similar with your own children or parents? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to support our community of truth tellers. And consider sharing this video with someone who might need to hear that maintaining their dignity isn't selfish, it's essential. Thank you for listening to my journey with an open heart. Remember, healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals.